Hey guys, Guy78 here. Welcome to a video on my build, Castnado. So this is a build that's mostly about Phasecast and throwing grenades, that's the name. It's a build that was inspired by Quack's Caststab in the community document that I've been playing, and I also noticed that there wasn't a lot of talk on grenades on Amara, and when I said in an earlier video that she's not proficient with grenades, I lied. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So this is a build that you're mainly going to be using a Guardian Angel with URAD because I designed this around the Deathless, but this isn't always the case, and I would like to explain that later. But for now, general statement, you're going to be using a Nova Shield like the Frozen Heart or the Void Rift, sometimes a Revolter, but the Revolter is mid on this build, as it should be because Nova Shields are just better. And the grenade like the Gas Call, the Light Speed, and longbows, and then some of the other grenades, which I would also like to get into. And let's look at the skill tree. This is going to be heavy on blue and purple because, well, action skill output and general non-gun output. And I would like to explain my choices with this build. Do harm is obviously big because of Unweave the Rainbow and Tandava, like I said. And we also are spec'ing the Body and Mind for filler between your grenades and action skills. But a funny thing you might notice is that I have Transcend maxed out, and you might be wondering if you're not shooting a gun, because this isn't a gun build, why are you expecting to Transcend? That is because a lot of the top grenades are capable of critting, like the Light Speed, the Gas Call, the Hunter Seeker, and sometimes the Hex, but this isn't a Hex heavy build. Ascendant just for Expedite, Laid Bare. Like I said in the Amara series, this is just huge for your damage output because you're able to debuff so many things with the Tandava. And since we're also taking Avatar, this also lets you do Tandava into another Tandava. And more rush stacks is just great. Awakening for a little bit more do harm, and that's about it. Alacrity and fast hands because sometimes this can be a terror build and you do need to swap guns a lot, and also for your face puncher. And if we look at the purple tree now, heavy rain just for a little bit of extra splash, a little bit of projectile speed. I'm not sure if that affects grenades. Unweave the Rainbow is used for mobbing. Sometimes you might notice that your grenade doesn't always do as much damage as you might like. So as a quick band-aid fix, you can freeze them with the Frozen Heart and get a massive bonus element on grenades or a decent sized one on your action skills. Combo Breaker in the off chance that your face puncher kills or that you are using a fish or a stinger. This can result in chains, but also it has a great synergy with the Hunter Seeker I will explain later on. And like I said earlier, charge speed and reload speed, very useful for the face puncher and for swap speed. Burn both ends, this is just a lot of damage, a lot of elemental damage. You're not always taking damage because this build just kills everything instantly when you press a button. And as a Deathless build, it doesn't always have the best survivability. And now we get to some of the nicer stuff, Body and Mind. Since I did take notes from Caststab, Body and Mind just comes with this build because Face Puncher. It's useful for when you're low on grenades or if there's an enemy that you don't want to have a hassle trying to kill with a Tandava or a Nova or something. You can just shoot them with a face puncher and they die and you get Expedite from it. Free the Soul is actually pretty good for what we're doing, since most of the time this build does use a Frozen Heart. You're getting a lot of Free the Soul flying around and getting a little bit extra Expedite and killing some things with Hollow Point. The big reason we spec this far in Purple Tree is Clear the Mind. This will make you able to just use one element for pretty much anything and force something like the Gas Call, which is corrosive locked, to be able to easily take out flesh and armor, aside from URAD, which is another reason why we can just use any grenade we want. And now explaining some of the smaller trees, this is just for corrosive. We're basically not getting anything out of green tree for how much points I put into it. And for red tree, 1 point infusion because we want to double our Body and Mind procs, but I am actually boosting an anima, and that is because status effect damage is actually pretty important for this build because most of the time this is a URAD build. We want Radsplosions, big Radsplosions. some of these grenades have insanely large dots, which lead to large red explosions, on top of the Frozen Heart and Tandava also causing a dot. And also, sometimes you go Elemental Projector, especially with the driver. So, boost Anima with the Phaser. I'll explain our comp choice later, but after that, Tempest, this is also 10% shock damage, not 20. Tempest is just used to give us some elemental damage when Burn Both Ends isn't. And also, Eternal Fist, just for the funny for later. Illuminated Fist, this is used for the off chance that you're going fish or something, and for the Kensei. And now to explain class mods. So like I said earlier, for class mod choice, you want Splash Radius. Splash damage you can get away with because Amara has some entry and your artifact should take care of that. But the big thing is splash damage, radius, and grenade damage. Amara still does not get as much grenade damage like going into her grenades as some of the other classes, so we do need to optimize our passives a bit more. This is a largely save edited build, which is why I have all these rules. And some points in an Anima help a little bit, but as long as it's just a phase Zerker, because it's just such a consistent comp, easy rush, easy cooldown. Everything else about it is not really that important, but some of the other class mods that we use sometimes are Golden Rule for when we're not going Deathless so that you can dot yourself and get a ton of cooldown. The Muse for mainly Laid Bare and for the Ball. The Driver for Elemental Projector and a little bit of move speed. And a huge one is actually the Kensei. The Hunter Seeker gets bullet damage, which means that if you have next to max active, it gets that. But the big one is that it gets Kensei. And if you have melee boosts, which as you can see I have melee damage passive, the splash damage and all that isn't that important. But the melee damage and points in Joyful Freedom are going to give us a ton of melee damage going into our Hunter Seeker. And with that being said, that'll allow us to proc Combo Breaker, which lets us spam more Tandava, more Nova, get more Joyful Freedom, more damage everywhere, and just better Kensei uptime because your Hunter Seekers are already in the air. And now, onto the artifact. Same thing, grenade damage, super important. This is actually 55% despite what it says. Area of effect damage in the second slot because of the radius boost, and because it's just a huge number. The third number can be what you want, and it doesn't need to be a Snowdrift, but most of the time we're going to be using a Deathless. Because, like I said, most of the time this is a URAD build. So, Guardian Angel with URAD, Face Puncher with URAD most of the time, and a Free Radical just for second wins. Shield. Like I said, Frozen Heart and the Void Rift are going to be your top picks, especially if you're going URAD, because Nova Shields with URAD are going to kill everything, they're going to dot everything, and they're going to deal with the aggro that you might deal with from spiking into Burn Both Ends on my build and kind of being squishy. Malawan Takedown is going to be one of the harder things to do with URAD. But some other shield choices, if you're using one of the other class mods, or especially some of the other artifacts, I would recommend an Auto Idol, because I'm not spec'd into Samsara on my build, so sometimes survivability can be a little bit of an issue. Or a Victory Rush if you want a little bit of global damage if you're not going Terror. And also, this build is great with slams, with spark plugs, but that's not something I want to get into right now because that's just stuff I do on the side. Some other stuff is you can use a Terror damage, Terror Generator Face Puncher for if you want to do Terror, and as you can see I have anoints for that. And let me just explain some of these grenades. The main one, Gas Call, Gas Balls, and Light Speed. These are the top grenades for regular grenade shenanigans. And I actually have two different anoints. One for Terror damage, if I'm doing Terror, and one that's just add grenade. And you'll see that you get plenty of damage. Like, I have a mod to double the health of Guardian Takedown, and you'll see it's just gonna rip through them, no problem. We have our longbows, obviously. This is for when you just want to boss with something. If you stick something with the sticky, it's gonna die. I one-shotted a 100 billion health Tron with a single sticky grenade, so triple can kill anything in the game. I don't want to hear you complain about bossing. And then some of these are just funny. Miracle Bomb because of Puddle. And then the Hex is very good at lower tier content where the enemies have very available crit spots and not a lot of health. That's because the Hex is very good at explosions and it can crit. It will also benefit from Unweave the Rainbow quite a bit. And Hunter Seeker for Kensei. Fish. This is not a build that's designed around fish, but it's the fish. It's, you know what the fish does. I have a different but similar Amara for that, which is kind of like a similarity between Rack Stab and Grenade Racks. This build is basically me trying to pretend that Amara is as good as Flak at anything that she can do, because she is. Yeah, and that's the meat and potatoes of the build. I also have for my Guardian Angel Anoints just a few silly things like the action skill damage anoints and phase grasping an enemy, the terror skulls for if you want to do that, since we have eternal fizz. There's also things you can do with if you're using the ball. You can have maybe action skill active, but this is mostly Tandava. I will get into ball stuff in another video. And for now, I'll just show you the gameplay.